The very essence of the mental game is this. The only reason an event matters is because we make it matter.
Welcome to the Farrier podcast, where I will sit down and converse with the superstars, the overachievers, the masters of our craft. Each episode will be a deep dive into their personal philosophies, their habits, the tools they use, and the secrets to not only their success, but overcoming failure as well.
First, find somebody you can mimic, then find somebody you can stand, and then try to focus on one style until you master that style.
So if you say I can't do something, well, you're absolutely right. But if you say you're going to, you're absolutely right with that too.
People say that you shouldn't define yourself by your work. That is not true.
You know what Dave Farley does when he's, lucky enough to be at the World Equestrian Games? I'm watching other people work.
Yeah.
I don't think we do that enough.
This podcast is for all of you out there who share my passion for the job and the desire to always improve. These interviews will put you in touch with the inner workings of the role models we all want to emulate. So let's get to it.
There's only so many hours in a day, and it's a matter of what you do with them.
Welcome, everyone. If you've ever listened to this podcast and wondered what it would be like to have me in the guest seat, my podcasting compadre, Daniel Bennett, did just that on his Lockdown Farrier Learning podcast. The main topic of our conversation was farrier education in North America. Daniel even had a surprise and turned the stratum tuctorium on me. He even pirated my intro. It was a lot of fun, and he has many informative episodes available. His productivity puts mine to shame. Today I'm speaking with Dr. Alan Manning, MSC DVM. From my early beginnings as a farrier, it was always exciting to run into this gentleman. He is one of those vets who will always work with you on a lameness problem and will never throw you under the bus if things don't go as predicted with the shoeing plan. Some of my early mentors warned me about working with vets, but Alan quickly showed me that farriers and vets could work together as a team, and that this was to the benefit of everyone, most importantly, the horse. Pertinent to our conversation, Dr. Allen is well known in Canada for his expertise in performance horse lameness and rehabilitation. He has been an FEI accredited veterinarian for Canada for over 20 years and has attended the Pan Am Games for the Canadian Dressage team as well as the World Equestrian Games for the Para-dressage team. Every time I have had an opportunity to work with this man, he has patiently taught me a great deal. He is, however, a hard person to peg down for an interview. It took a snowy day while working on a case with him at his farm and clinic in Norton, Ontario, for us to finally have that conversation. I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. I've wanted to have you on the podcast for quite a while. You're quite well known throughout this country for sure as the lameness vet that has toured all over. You've worked with a lot of farriers. You've had a lot of experiences, and I thought it would be good for the podcast and for the farriers who listen just to get your story and tell us what it's all about.
Sounds good. Yeah, we finally got together here on a nice snowy day when there's not much else to do other than maybe go for a snowmobile ride.
Yeah.
But, we spend a lot of time working with the farriers, and I think it's really important to have a good relationship with the farriers because we all got to work together.
For sure.
And to try and get these horses the best we can. And we all know there's a lot of different ways to do things. And it's great to learn everybody has a different idea and try to figure it out which you think is going to work best for that horse.
Yeah, for sure. I guess we should start where you began.
Where I began, that's a good question.
The East Coast, right?
Yeah, originally from Prince Edward Island. I still call that home. Probably end up there someday. We, as youngsters, were very lucky. We had a lot of horses to ride. My parents were very involved in the horse shows. So we showed all over there, Quebec and up in Ontario, back and forth. And then when I decided that wasn't going to be the full-time career, I'm not sure why, but vet school was the next best thing, I should say. And luckily for us, that's where we ended up. I guess graduated in 1990 from OVC. I did a master's in repro at the vet school out west at WCVM in Saskatoon while I was doing my vet school work because I did an animal science degree initially.
Okay.
And then decided that we would try to go through vet school. And here we are almost 30 some years later. And it's been quite a ride.
Yeah, no kidding.
I've been lucky to be involved with some of the higher end horses, I guess we can call them, through the World Equestrian Games. I've been to the Pan Am Games. The plan is to go to Tokyo this year for the dressage team and the para-dressage team. If that all goes, that'll be quite a take to get all those horses over there. And with the COVID situation that's going on now, it's made a lot of headaches for a lot of people. But hopefully they can pull it all off. And it's exciting to go to those kind of venues, and you get to meet a lot of vets from all over the world, and a lot of farriers also from all over the world. The World Equestrian Games in Tryon, it was neat. We spent a fair bit of time with the farriers there. They had a good group on the go there as well.
Oh, okay.
Once again, to learn and pick everybody's brain and go from there.
Now, getting into this type of horse, like the sport horses that you predominantly do? Would that be
our majority of ours are all sport horses, yeah. I mean, 100 jumper, dressage horses, some event horses too. There's not as many in our area. For me, it kind of came naturally because I did show jumpers right through up till, just before I started vet school, really. And we breed a lot of horses too in the 100 jumper type and play with them. That's kind of my passion, to see those horses mature and grow and see what they can develop into.
Right.
My wife may not think that's such a good idea. We don't tend to count how many there is now and then.
Right.
But it's been great because that really helps to know what these owners are going through and the farriers are going through. When you have a horse of your own and it gets injured or hurt and you can't do what you want to do after all the time you spent with it, you know what they're feeling. Mm-hmm. And you know the other side of it as well.
Yeah. They can be pretty disappointing.
Yeah. As the one we worked on of mine this morning, we can tell that they can sure hit you with a lot of different things. You think you got it under control and you're on the right path, and then all of a sudden something else will happen.
Yeah.
But that's horses.
For sure. So once you got into this, you obviously have a fairly strong passion for the lameness issues. I've worked with you on several, and I know people from even well before I started who that's what you're known for to them, like working alongside them. And
lameness has kind of been a passion of mine. And I think from riding horses, it helps you a lot in that it's one of the toughest things as a veterinarian to probably get a handle of and to learn. And the treatments and what we're finding on these horses has changed a lot too. But being able to have been a rider and know how certain things feel, and sometimes you can see things, but they can't feel it, the rider, and opposite. Mm-hmm. I think that really helps. And that's what gave me the passion to try to dig into that deeper. And it makes it really challenging. You go to look at a horse that's lame and you have no idea. You could be there 15 minutes or you could be there for the next 15 months trying to get this thing right. I like the challenge. And obviously, the more you do of that and the harder cases, the more comfortable you feel. And so then you can work on those other cases you had and say, geez, that's just like that other horse we had. I wonder if there's a chance this could be similar, you know what I mean? And that takes time as a veterinarian. And you have to do a lot of them. If you don't do a lot of lameness and you're looking at this one and that one, you have to be confident in your ability to block these horses. And am I blocking the right spot or not, so that you can put it all together to try to figure it out. Mm-hmm. Over the last 10, 15 years, the quality of the equipment we have and the ultrasounds, the ability to see things that we couldn't see before, we had to re-educate our eye, the digital units, has really made it exciting to be able to see, holy crap, now I can ultrasound this horse's foot. And also to the next step is with the MRIs that we're able to perform now. So a lot of those horses where we did have a question mark and we just called it navicular, because it blocked out to the foot. And we try different things, but they kind of get all labeled that. But now we know that that's not really the case. There's a lot more going on in there we had any idea of.
Right. Now, around when did the MRI start to become prevalent here?
I'm going to say we probably had that 10, 15 years now. Yeah, it's scary how fast time goes, but it has. And it's really altered the way that we treat some of these horses. So now we know that we can do this, we can do that, instead of just stall resting them or whatever. when you know where sometimes you're throwing a dart on the treatment, let's say an educated dart, but this really helps us to be able to do some stuff for some of these horses that do have, there's a lot of ligament, tendon, and foot injuries that we all just assume were the navicular. You know what I mean? And
right.
I don't remember the last time I actually saw a horse that I said it was from the navicular bone, navicular disease that we all talked about before from those radiographs, the lollipops. I don't remember the last one I had like that. Like, it's most always soft tissue we found nowadays.
Right.
There is a lot of navicular bone bruising, let's say, or coffin bone bruising that we were able to identify with the MRIs. And, that's helped us to treat those horses as well.
Mm-hmm. Now, one of the contentious issues that we talk about a lot as farriers is footing. And I imagine you saw the change over when everybody had sand or something similar and then changed.
Yeah, footing's another topic we could spend all day on that one too, but it's one of my passions too, because these horses nowadays with the Euro footing, we call it, if you want to, they're all so different. Every time they put it down, it's not the same.
Yeah.
Even though they hope it is, the footing people, I know they scratch their heads a lot and they do some really good work and to help fix footing. But once again, every time they blend this blend that they think they've done every time, every grain of sand, even if you get it same place, is different, So there's a lot of tweaking, but a lot of the problem now is some of these horses are not trained on that at home and they go to the horse show, and that's where most of the horse shows have the footing, and we understand that. They've improved them a lot here, because we know that the temperature makes a big difference on how solid or that footing is or how much slide there is, and how long it's been put down, how well it's packed, what the weather's been like. But I understand why the horse shows have that footing, because they can run more horses on that footing and it stands up to it.
Right.
But it is also harder on these horses jumping off. There's more torque there on these. We have a lot of collateral ligament injuries, which we never had before.
Right.
Or we never did even knew how to diagnose them before, to tell the honest truth. And I think that's one of the important things with these horses as trainers. They need to go and train on this footing now and then, not just horse show on this footing if they don't have it at home. And if they do have it at home, then you also got to do some other stuff, because on that footing all the time also isn't the best. What I mean? Like the cross training, as I call it. Like if you have a grass ring or the hacking, a bunch of us were discussing the other day how unfortunately we don't have many grass rings left around here now. And I guess Angel Stones is not there anymore. We used to show in a hayfield for years and years and years and never thought twice about it. Like if you ever said you were going to do that now, like nobody would show up.
Right.
But I think being able to cross-train is really important on these horses, so there's not as much stress, just like us as human athletes, right?
Yeah, I was just thinking
cross-training is a big part of, training at a higher level now, because the repetitive wear and tear, it takes a toll.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we were just discussing our knees a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
Now, when that change happened, did you notice that the shoeing changed too, or was that kind of a slow progression? Do you think people caught on to that right away?
I think there was some shoeing changes, but not right away. Because initially, it was just only one or two horse shows had it. And people are like, well, we're not going to be there. The next week, we're going on a grass ring, or we're doing that, or a sand ring, I should say. It's more of a gradual change. But the farriers are aware of this now. And, we need to have a little more slide sometimes. And these horses aren't corked as much as they used to be. And,
right.
and other shoeing changes, as you know all about. Whoever would have thought a jumper would be running around with a pair of flip-flops on, that when they came out in the standardbreds years and years ago, we were like, what is that?
Yeah.
I forget where they came from Europe. Some trotters came over with them and people were like, whoa. It's great to be able to use those different techniques and shoeing types to help us, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I always think there had to be one farrier who first tried to present that idea to a vet or to the trainer he was working with, and actually let them trust him enough to try it, right?
To give it a go. It's just like, back years ago, I think we were one of the first people that started to patch these quarter cracks and patch these horses with the stuff. And the farriers thought we were crazy. And they're like, what are you doing, right? And now there's not many farriers that don't do that, you know what I mean? And use that in their arsenal of tools that they have to help these horses.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can remember trying to get that stuff to stick and heating the foot up and playing with that stuff. Yeah, that was quite something.
I wonder too if now it's a much more consistent product, because once you have the formula down to the process, it seems to work a lot better.
No, I was lucky back in the day. I worked with Dr. Coltajon, and it was one of his passions with the quarter cracks and playing with the acrylic and that type of stuff. So it was just a natural way to learn and to get used to it, I guess.
Now, another case, it was one I remember we've worked on a couple quarter cracks, but one that I came in on with you where you had to resect a foot with the white lightning.
We have done a lot of resection of feet with white line disease. I think the only way to get those things fixed is to remove as much of the hoof wall as you can to get back to some good healthy tissue and get the air at it to let that stuff heal, and some iodine. There's the white lightning, all other things you can use on those. But it's pretty scary the first few times you do that and you're like, oh my God, I took off half that horse's foot.
Yeah.
How you got to work with the blacksmith to help support that foot, et cetera, et cetera. I can remember I did a very expensive one years ago, and a long time ago, actually. And I was like, that horse had heat in its foot for like 2 months, and it was really worrisome, but it came along fine.
Oh, yeah.
But it's, one of those things, every time you walked into that barn, you're like, oh my God, I'm not sure I want to go in that stall and just see what we got there. But usually, eventually with time, Mother Nature usually helps us, you know what I mean? And that one did come around. But yeah, that horse lost, I think it was close to 3/4 of his foot we had to resect. And it was a long time healing, but it did, and the horse came back and jumped some Grand Prix for sure.
Okay. And do you think that white line is something that has become more prevalent or less, or it has just been an issue all the way along?
I think it's always been there. It's easier to identify now. Sometimes you can see it very easily, right? Yeah. But sometimes there's ones that you block a foot, you can't find anything wrong with it. The Farrier did them a week or two ago, and then you x-ray and you can see some, the white lines of air up the track up there, and you're like, holy crap, how did we miss that? You pull the shoe off and you cannot see it at all.
Mm-hmm.
Now you start picking away when you know where to pick, and yeah, there it is.
Yeah.
They're very rewarding too when you can get them to come around. That's for sure.
It's just a matter of convincing the client.
Well, yeah, we've had a few phone calls from clients when they showed up after we did this. They weren't there initially, and they're like, what did you do to my horse's foot? And you're like, no, relax. We're okay. We know what we're doing. I hope we do anyway, you say in the back of your mind. Majority of them do come along, and they settle down once they realize what you're doing. I try to prepare them very well before this happens, or let them be there when we do it so they can see what we're doing and why we're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And that gets to another topic of mine of radiographing feet and working with the farriers. It's so important to be able to do that so you can both, knock heads together, because as sometimes what looks like on the outside is not what's going on the inside. And it's really important to try to get some of these cases to come around to be able to do that, and the clients to allow us to do that.
Yes, exactly.
I mean, obviously the digital x-rays that changed the game, right? When we were able to do that, look at them together and redo the horse's foot, trim it a little different, whatever, x-ray them again, and you can see where you're at. And
instantaneously.
The radiographing feet and for balance work has been a major benefit for everybody.
For sure. Now that actually is a good segue into what I was going to ask you next, which is, so as farriers, I've learned that back in the day, farriers didn't work well together. They wouldn't cooperate. Peter Arento just told me a story about a guy packing up he'd done 3 feet and then packed up his truck when Peter arrived at the barn because he didn't want him to see him do his work. When I first started, I had some old guard farriers tell me, never work with vets. Like, don't deal with them, blah, blah, blah. I'm sure you can guess half of them who tell me that. But
initially, a lot of them were concerned with what we're going to say or what we're going to do. And I mean, obviously, nowadays, that's so much better than it used to be. And that's the whole scoop. We got to work together to try to get these horses better, right? Work with the farrier or the owner. I know there's a fine line there sometimes to make it all work. And I do my best. And I tell any other veterinarian or young veterinarian that I come with, I said, the farrier's your friend.
Mm-hmm.
And unless you guys can work together, and they're going to have different ideas than you are, and that's fine. And sometimes, like you and I know, working together on cases that, hey, what do you think? Why don't we try this? And you might say, well, I'm thinking maybe we should do that. And they were like, well, let's try it. Warn the owner that we might need to change this in a week.
Yeah.
But let's give it a go one way or the other, whichever one we decide on, because there's lots of different ways to, excuse the pun, but skin the cat. But, to see, and sometimes my idea doesn't work as well as the farrier's idea.
Right.
And you got to be aware that, and the owner's got to be aware too, that, hey, we're going to try this, but, I may be calling Brian to come back next week to change it and do it a different way.
Yeah. Well, and you've run into it too, I'm sure, where the thing that worked 99 times on the 100th
It
The
doesn't.
horse does the exact opposite.
Yeah,
or
it doesn't
reacts
know
the
it,
opposite way.
and that's the thing about these horses. They'll put a quirk in it one way or another somewhere.
Mhm.
And that's what makes it kind of exciting. So every day is not boring.
Yeah.
So you get to play with these things a little bit. I shouldn't say play, but do the best you can to do the job you think is right. But
Mhm.
you might need to change the plan.
Yeah.
Just like in a football game, that running the ball all the time doesn't always work on certain teams, but then you can throw it and then go back again, right?
Yeah.
So you got to be able to change it up. But it's so important to be able to work with the farriers. And with the other thing too, with me, I'm quite often working with other, not just farriers, but veterinarians, because the horse is in another part of the world,
Oh, right. Yeah.
and you got to, touch base with them, fire your x-rays off to them so they can have a look and see and put our heads all together to do the best we can for this horse, to get it to compete as best you can or be as comfortable as you can.
Yeah.
To perform well.
Now, something that I have found, and I wonder if you have had the same experience, is that if I deal with a client in the attending veterinarian, I try to just talk to the veterinarian at some point. I don't let the client be the intermediary in messaging back and forth, because often I find stuff gets added or detracted or completely.
Yeah, I know. It'll get totally turned around. And I agree that you need to talk directly with the veterinarian or directly with the client too, whichever. It's really important because it can get, especially with a client that's not educated the way we are, and they're not their own owner, right?
Yeah.
And this guy may be a financial person or whatever, and this is totally Greek to them. So it is very important to touch base with the farrier themselves. I try to always send my x-rays over so they can have them and look at them, or at least the simplest thing too is just get the client, take a picture of them while you're there and make sure they're labeled right, left, or whatever, so that he can even show them, or she can show them to the farrier, if you can't get the email running or something like that. And quite often, sometimes the farriers come in that afternoon and you don't have time to get them downloaded and fire them over. So
Yeah.
whatever you can do to simplify things. And yeah, if it'll get turned around, it'll get turned around. Yeah.
Now, what do you do in a case where the farrier won't work with you? How do you
That
approach
can be tough. It's really rare nowadays. I have to
Okay,
admit,
good.
it's really rare nowadays, but I do my best to explain to them, we're not trying to reinvent your wheel or anything like this. We're just trying to work together. And it is much rarer nowadays than it used to be, because it's just commonplace now with especially with this level of horses, right? And especially in these horses too, they're not just all over the world, but they're going to Florida for the winter. They're going to have a different farrier and blacksmith down there quite often if they're lucky enough. And the farrier is down there as well to help them. That's all great, you know what I mean? But that doesn't always happen. So it is really important to be able to work with them, and communication comes with a big, important part of the whole program.
Yeah, for sure. Now, for continuing education as a veterinarian, what are some of the things some of your favorite kind of go-tos for stuff like that, especially for lameness?
Yeah, I mean, like the AAP has been going for years and years and years, and that's really good. As you get longer in your career, you may not get as much every session, but the table topic sessions I find really is what I like to hit nowadays, because you can talk a little bit just off the cuff of certain things, which sometimes you wouldn't want to say in front of 5,000 people in front of the room. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Sometimes in the bar or at dinner, you're going to learn a lot there too. And it's really neat to be able to go to those kind of things and talk to people from all over the world. It's neat to find out that this guy in Holland has the exact same problem you do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or they have the same issues with those horses that we do here, and see on their take of it. Sometimes they have some different drugs we can use or different techniques to use. And that's all a part of learning. And that's one thing about this game is, as a veterinarian, it never stops.
No, and that's the
It
same
never stops.
on the farrier side too. Yeah.
The ISELP courses, I've been to an awful lot of them. And even before that started with the ultrasound, was probably one of the most beneficial education pieces that I've had throughout the years. And you get to, once again, see all those people from all over the world. You're maybe 25 to 50 all there together that are just equine practitioners. And there you get to really focus in on just one aspect of a lameness. You're just working on the foot or the knee or the hock, or, you know what I mean, or backs or necks. And that has, really helped us zone in on, not just the anatomy, which, we had back 30 years ago when we went to school, but you still need to know that. And now that they've been able to identify more things with the MRI and stuff like that, it's really helped to educate us a lot and to help these horses on different treatments and et cetera.
Okay, cool. Now, your practice has grown large enough that now even second generation Manning is
it's
involved.
It's pretty lucky. I have 2 kids. They're great kids, and Paige is taken into the horses, and that was really neat because that was one of my passes. And then she said she never would go through vet school, and then of course there she is in vet school. And luckily for us, she's back here working and now is a partner along with Emily, Dr. Emily. Yeah, it's really neat to be able to work together, and it's funny how we both have the same kind of ideas and it's like to do things the same way. And my son James has my other passion of the windsurfing, kiteboarding, and all that kind of stuff. And so it was great to spend time with him and the hockey, which was totally opposite. So you get away from it for a little bit.
Yep.
And for years there, I was in the hockey rink every other night, if not every night, quite often. You know what I mean? So you get to recharge your battery doing something different, and that's really important. So been great with the 2 kids. And my wife Sue, she's put up with us all and helps run the whole show. So yeah, we've been very lucky that way.
Yeah.
But it is really neat to have someone like Paige that's here and working with us and passionate like we all are.
Yeah, for sure. And she has definitely learned, along with Emily too, that the spirit of cooperating and working together, because all 3 of you, I know when I have a case with you, I'm going to hear from you and we're going to be able to talk about it.
No, we try to do it as professional as we can. And luckily we're all on the same page that way, and all like to work the same way and to extrapolate. We're so lucky to have the clinic that we have here to, bring lame horses in here and bring rehab horses in here. And, this place has been going for 10, 15 years now. And what you've learned over the years to have them here and be able to see those horses every day as they rehab, and the shoeing changes we make, sometimes what we start off with is not what we end up with. And when you can see them every day, and also the staff that we have, that they know what we like to see and not see. And if something doesn't seem right, right away, and you can work on it to try to fix it and get things changed to get these horses back in the ring as fast as you can.
Yeah, for sure.
That's been a big bonus. My wife might admit it's a bit of a headache too, but when you look out there and there's like 50 horses here,
they're always there.
But anyway, it's all good.
Yeah. And you also have the benefit of a really good farrier, a good friend of mine who comes in quite often, Kathy, right?
Yes.
I know there are many farriers who come through, but Kathy does a lot of them.
Yeah, Kathy does
here.
the majority of them now. Yeah, Kathy and her team come and do a lot. And we have a lot with the young horses here. There's always 5 foals usually a year that are here. We breed a lot of horses for ourselves as well as clients that end up staying here. And she does the majority of it. Yeah. And Kathy's great. And she's lucky, lives very closely. So if something needs change, there's always something. And I shouldn't say we have a farrier here almost every day, but it's quite often we do have a farrier here. And that's the other thing too for us that's very lucky is that, clients, that horses that come here to rehab, I like to keep the same farrier on the same horse as long as they're willing to come here, because they're the ones that are going to have to deal with this horse when it leaves here.
Yeah.
And we're lucky to be able to do that and learn a little bit from each farrier too that comes, you know what I mean? So that's the great thing here, which is lucky for us too, to be able to work with so many good farriers too, right?
Mm-hmm. Now, you were talking about the various things that you've been able to do to recharge your batteries. I had a discussion, I guess it was in the fall. You were going on a vacation, which I think for many years was a rare thing for you, was it not?
Yeah, a lot of years it was rare. But I have to admit now, with having Emily and Paige here and the on-call group that we do have, I'm very lucky. I haven't done on-call now for quite a while, but so I know that the horses, I can go away and do stuff with the team or do stuff with the horses in Florida or other parts of the world and not have to worry because I know things are taken care of here.
Yeah.
And that also has enabled me the last, 5 to 10 years to be able to take more time off and do some other things as well, other passions.
Yeah, like your kite surfing.
Yeah, the kite surfing, that, snowmobiling, any of those things. I like to be active.
Now, in telling that story, you had told me the story about your brother. And I thought we should at least talk about it just to sort of, it really instills that lesson. It did for me.
Yeah. My brother and I, growing up, we were very close. We did a lot of stuff together. They're 2 or 3 years apart. We all rode horses together. We played hockey together. We skied together. We did everything together. And we also took that same, work ethic, I guess, when we started it. He was a physiotherapist. He spent a lot of times at the hockey rink, working for teams in the soccer field and all that, and worked continuously for years. So his family life was a little bit tougher because there were always a hockey game or something on. And same with us, there's always a horse show or something else that they wanted you to work at or whatever. And so it's tough to make it all work.
Mm-hmm.
And then, unfortunately for him, of course, he was all ready to slow down, and he went to play hockey and never came home. And that was really tough because he was ready to retire and do things the different way and spend more time at home and with his kids and that kind of stuff. So that's been really tough, and it really does open your eyes that you never know what you're going to do here.
Mm-hmm.
He had no idea. He went to play hockey and had a heart attack, and that was it. So I think that's one word I have for everybody. I know a lot of veterinarians, a lot of farriers. We work a lot.
Yeah.
And we get a lot of demands from clients to come here, do this, and, pull a shoe here on Saturday, Sunday, you're running out to do something like that. And I know in your position, it's tough because to get someone else to go do that, and there's a show the next day or two, and that client's a good client, and so you got to run and do that. For me, it's a little bit easier because one of the other crew can run and help to do that. Whatever you can to try to do other things to keep your battery charged and have a little bit of other, enjoyment in life as well. I know we all love working. I mean, I got to admit, there's no better job than what I had. I'm hoping you think the same as your job.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I mean, I think it was like 2 years ago in the winter, and my hands were sore from having 10 surgeries on them, and it was cold, and I got kicked in the hand, checked in a joint, and I'm like, you know what? Maybe today this is work. And I
That's
thought
what
driving
it took.
you know what? If it took me till now to say this was work and it wasn't enjoyment, that was pretty good.
Yeah.
But yeah, you guys take every day as you can and enjoy it as much as you can because you never know what tomorrow's going to bring. And especially now with this COVID thing on the go, I think that's everybody's kind of taken a step back and realized that maybe there is a little more than a horse show this weekend, you know what I mean, in life, and maybe we should go to the cottage. And I think it's all got to be, try to combine it as best you can.
Yeah.
To fulfill things.
Yeah, I've spoken to a lot of clients, coaches, and other farriers who've all said that, like, they went to a family cottage that they hadn't been to in a decade.
Yeah,
or
I know. So I had
yeah.
one client, she said there once, I think it was 2 years ago. I said, what are you going to do this weekend? Well, I'm trying to decide whether to go to the horse show or whether to go to the cottage. And I said, well, when was the last time you were at the cottage? And she goes, it was 5 or 6 years. I said, well, then it's a no-brainer. There's lots more horse shows. I think you should go to the cottage. And she sent me a picture of her on a paddleboard or something up there. I was thinking, you were right, is what she said. And yeah, there is more to life than in a horse show, even though horse shows are important.
Yeah. Now, I guess we should touch on that. How did COVID affect your practice?
That's a very good question. And actually, we've been extremely lucky. Yes, when things are shut down like we are right now, it's a little trickier to do work, but we're still allowed to do work.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, keeping care of your horse is essential. We try not to do things that we don't have to do. Sometimes clients aren't that happy about that.
Mm-hmm.
But we have been very lucky in that respect. And the same with you guys as farriers. I mean, their feet don't stop growing. And unfortunately, these horses need to be cared for. But it makes work a little bit tougher as you're trying to use a mask and you can't see because your glasses are fogged.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff. Learning how to inject joints with a mask on is a little bit trickier. There's no doubt about it. Everything takes a little bit longer than it used to, and you have to be a little more organized. But, our clients have really adapted to it well, and I'm afraid it's here to stay for a while.
Yeah, it looks like it. Yep.
Same with your clients. I'm sure you're lucky you may go to a barn and stay there all day, right? We're maybe in 10 barns in a day, right? So we try to be as safe as we can and, do all the protocols we're supposed to do. It isn't always practical at times, but we do our best.
Yeah. No, and that's kind of what we were experiencing when the first shutdown occurred. I thought for sure the summer was going to be right off for horses. And I haven't seen, now I've spoken to people all over North America and even in England, and they've been just as busy. Like nothing has changed that way and busier.
Yeah, I got to admit, at certain times for us, certain times of the year, it's quite different. But certain months have been busier, and then some other months haven't been as busy. But I cannot complain at all. Luckily for us in our occupation, that it's still going very strong. And there's a lot of people now that are, the horse sales are a lot more seems to be lately.
Yeah.
You're not your real expensive show horses because a lot of people can't show, as well. But there's a lot of, people that, always wanted to have a horse. And I'm going to buy a horse, you know what I mean? Which is really neat to see some new people into the industry. And also there's people spending more time with their horses because they can't do other things. And they're like, oh, you know what, maybe I want to do this to help this horse, see whatever. So there's a lot of calls that you get that you wouldn't get depending on the time of the year too, right? That they're like, well, but I am riding more now, so I may want to treat this horse now because we are training more, even though it's not show season.
Right.
And a lot of people aren't in Florida that we're normally in Florida. So that's a change for them and a change for us too.
Yeah, no kidding.
Normally you're getting a call to talk to their vet in Florida, whereas here you're running out to look at the horse.
Right.
Which has been great for us too. And I haven't been to the U.S. since the fall, right? So it is quite different because normally we'd be down there, for a week, most months through the winter. I'm here checking in our clients and helping out and trying to see what we can do to see how they're making out.
Yeah.
Which is the same for you and as well as a lot of other farriers.
Yeah, for sure.
And this border thing isn't going to get easier.
No, it doesn't look like it.
No.
And it's been interesting because I couldn't go south, but there are lots of American farriers who couldn't come north. So I think the work thing that everybody was kind of panicked about, it just balanced out.
Yeah, no, I know. And that's the same us with veterinarians too. Some that come up to work on some horses up here that they see in Florida, but they can't get up here either. So you end up doing that work. Yes, it's gone back and forth. Yeah, exactly. And it's changed the landscape a little bit, but that's all good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're humans. We can adapt.
Yep.
This portion of the podcast is called the stratum tuctorium. These are the short answer, surface stuff questions, but it's okay if the guest wants to go deeper. Enjoy. Your favorite book?
This would be funny if my wife ever listened to this, or my daughter. I haven't read a book for a lot of years, so I can't say that I really would have a favorite book.
Okay.
I'm one of those people that reading and stuff is tough for me because I was dyslexic as a kid and still am. So it takes a lot of brain power to do that. And I would much rather watch something or a video or something than to actually sit down and read a book. But probably the last things that I've read would either be a kiteboarding or a snowmobile magazine.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's interesting. We had a discussion, the gentleman that I was talking to this morning, he had spoken about how in England, they actually changed the system. Like they embraced some other things to help people with dyslexia.
Yeah.
And those things, like that must have thrown you quite a few curveballs.
Through vet school and all, it was tough going. I got to admit, I worked my ass off.
Yeah.
It started, I guess they identified when I was in grade 6, but back then there was no way. I memorized everything.
Really?
So I pulled it over on them all till they actually figured this out. So I spent a lot of summers taking extra English classes, etc. For me going through school, yeah, it was a lot of work. I had to write everything down. That's the only way I kind of remembered it. And when you go to write dog and you write God, it's pretty tough.
Yeah.
And to get through to do a master's and that kind of stuff. And I think that's probably what the work ethic that we have, you're kind of ingrained in it. And I had to work so much harder getting through school, and vet school and that was fine. The horse part of it, obviously, because we had lots of knowledge and the animals related, that was okay. But doing tests and exams where now they would be either verbal or,
Right.
instead of written. When I had to write an essay, it was a tough go.
No kidding.
Every exam I wrote it in pencil because when I reread it, I had to rewrite most of it. I was the last person out of every exam.
Wow.
Now, if it was multiple choice or anatomy or whatever, I'd be the first person out because those things came easy to me.
Right.
But the other parts, yeah, it was tough going.
Wow. What's your dream vet rig?
My dream vet rig. Oh, that's a good question. I initially had a bowie unit, and from then, and is that what you mean, like vehicle per rig? Yeah. So initially I had bowie units back when, and we thought that was the greatest thing ever, but they were actually not the greatest things ever because when it rained, you got pouring wet. And when you opened one of the top of those rigs, the snow or the rain came pouring in it. Initially, I didn't have a garage, so when you plugged it in, you had to chip off 2 or 3 inches of ice that had melted in the morning.
Right. Yeah.
And the trucks went through brakes, etc., like crazy. Went through trucks like crazy. The weight of those, etc.
Yeah.
They were tough on them. So I went from them to a suburban type rig or a Tahoe or whatever. And since then, that with the weight, with the box in the back of it's been what I've had ever since. I think I'm on, I don't know how many I've been on.
Okay.
Gary Cooper sold me a lot of trucks, a lot of Suburbans over the day, but I still think that's the best unit. You can lay the top up and, and away you go. You can get in there and get your drugs if it's raining or snowing or whatever, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
We have them set up. We take the back seats out of some of them, and so you have more room, and we have another box in there built. The new Stonewell type units that you guys have are definitely would be better. But once again, as I think you all know, when you need a new truck, you got to switch everything around. It's a lot of work for me. In an hour, they can have that box in and out of it and put in there, and it's pretty safe and easy.
Perfect. Now, just to explain to people who don't know, the Bowie box, that's the ones where they're like a fiberglass, aren't they?
They're fiberglass. I think they still make them. Yeah, and they slide in the back of a regular pickup truck. So you don't have to take the back of the box off. And so they slide in and out, but they have heaters in them, so that has to be hooked up to your radiator, et cetera, right? So there's always those things would leak now and then and stuff. And there's also hydro in there too, so it runs off, so the heaters can run off the truck. So there's that. The batteries took a beating on the trucks too.
So it doesn't sound like an easy transfer over with those either.
No, it wasn't. No. And then those are now built too that you can also take the whole back off the truck and the whole thing goes on.
Oh, okay.
There's those as well.
I have seen that. Yeah, that's right.
They have those and they open up from the side like a gull wing type thing. But I mean, some of the guys love those. To me, it just didn't work as well once I had them for a little while. When you get out of vet school, you want a Bowie unit in a truck right back in the day. And that was like everybody's dream, right? And initially I thought it was the best thing, but then you learn.
Yeah. Enough times to the garage, that would sort that out. Ideal number of horses to work on in one day?
Ideal number of horses to work on? That's a good question.
How about ideal number of lameness workups?
Maybe that's the worst thing about the lameness is that you never know. You get there, it could be a foot abscess or whatever, and you're done in 15 minutes and you look like God, or you could be there all day and you're still scratching your head.
Yeah.
But, usually we probably 5 horses, but sometimes there's 10 or 15 depending on the day.
Right.
And it gets really hard on quite often we'll go, and if we're going somewhere for a long distance, we'll assess the horses in one day. And you may do 10 or 15 horses assessments. And that's a lot of work and a lot of brain power. And then the next day you'll go ahead and treat whatever you think you're going to treat.
Oh, okay.
So we try to switch it up that way so that everything, once you've got stuff out to treat horses, you can just keep going. And so you need good notes, et cetera, as you go along. And so it can be anywhere between 5 or 10 or 15 horses, but it all depends. The thing is to try to have it organized and do it in a sequential pattern so that it's easy to remember everything and to get everything down and to look at these horses. That's another little comment. I'm a pet peeve about doing things. Maybe that's my dyslexic thing, that we always lunge the horses to the left first, then they go to the right first, no matter what the lameness is. So then I know when I'm writing my bills at that night, hey, cripes, I forgot when we first went, the horse was sound, and then so I know then it was on the right rein, and it was that leg was on the outside. So it's just the way we always do it that way. Same thing with x-raying or doing pre-purchase exams. We have a system that we go through, and so there's less chance you're going to miss something or forget something. Yeah. And we have a great report too that we built over the years and change it every few months when we think something different or some different idea, so you don't forget anything, and it's all documented. And the techs too, we are very lucky that we have a lot of different technicians, and so I may not have the same tech, but just once a week. It's not the same tech every day, so they know there's a system, and once they learn it, they know that hey, Al's going to do this next or whatever, and it makes things a lot more efficient.
Right. Yeah. It's the same with us. Like once we have a system.
Yeah, exactly. Which shoe do you take off first?
I typically take off the right 4.
Okay, that's interesting. That's funny.
Which is a little weird. Yeah, if for some reason that's the one I'm.
And I guess that's a pony club thing too from way back when. That's you always you approach the horse on the left, that kind of stuff, right? And you do this, you always lunge to the left. That was kind of ingrained, I guess, back in the day.
Yeah. What's your favorite type of horse to work on?
Favorite type of horse? I mean, majority of ours are all warm bloods nowadays. So that's the majority of them. The thoroughbreds, we still do some of them. They're still there. They're a little more sensitive and finicky for sure. Not that some of our warm bloods aren't either.
Yeah.
But I think that's something that as you see horses more often and spend more time with them, you get to look at their eye when you first get there, and you know that, hey, this is going to be an easy one, or no, you better watch out that you don't get hurt dealing with these things. And that's, I guess, another subject we didn't really topic on, but safety and working around these critters.
Yeah.
A lot of us, I mean, I know I've been hurt numerous times. I'm sure you have too. And to be able to read these horses and when you're going to get it into trouble and when this horse is going to be cooperative or not takes time.
You had some hard lessons along the way.
Yes, you sure do. And when you let your guard down, that's when you're going to find out that was not the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so we always, once again, try to do everything systematically, and the twitches are put on a certain way and people stand in a certain place. And the techs, they save our lives a lot, and they know that they're responsible for our safety. And hey, Al, I don't like this, the way this is going here. Just a second, let's do something different, or we need more trank or whatever.
Yeah.
There's not one veterinarian out there that hasn't, or a farrier hasn't got hurt one way or another doing something and said, that was my fault. I shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
Or, you know what, we should have taken more time. We're always in a rush and done something different or readjust something, right?
Yeah.
You can get away with it for so long, and soon enough, then
it catches you.
Yeah.
Yep, for sure.
Yeah.
Now, there have been a few incidences of late, especially with head injuries. And I think from the people I've spoken to in the farrier community, I think we're going to try to do a little more client awareness, because sometimes it's the clients themselves who aren't aware of the bad situations they're creating.
Yeah, and that's the training of the horses, and that's where you're lucky if you've been working with your clientele. We have for a lot of years that what that yearling's never been touched, or you know what I mean, or that one's brought in and played with, and now that one's so spoiled that you got to watch out that way.
Yeah,
there's the both different ends of the scale there. And that's one thing you get to learn once you start working with your clients and saying, hey, listen, you guys got to start working with this horse or the black, or you got to have a vet here to say this thing before I'm not getting killed for this one. And unfortunately, when you're younger, you think you can do that, right? And it's like, oh, there's no big deal here. I can hold on to this thing, or we can do that. Soon enough, you learn, that there's another way to do this, and hopefully with it, so nobody, not just you, the horse too, or doesn't get hurt too, right?
Yep.
We've all been there where they're, flipping over backwards or something out of the blue. And you're like, where did that come from?
Mm-hmm.
Or you have a horse sedated and it still kicks faster than anything you could ever imagine. You can stick a needle in it. They don't care, but a fly lands on them, or you do something just the wrong way. And yeah.
It's definitely, like you said, it's a learning curve. And I think what we do need to learn is that there is no shame in losing a client for that reason. Like if that client isn't going to get the horse tranked, then your life isn't worth whatever the trim or shoeing or...
No, and for the farriers, I totally understand. You guys have one of the toughest jobs there is, because sometimes it may not be, even though we all know, hey, we don't want to lose a client or this or that, and we can make this work. But sometimes when you say to a client that, this just isn't working for us or whatever, you know what I mean, that maybe it's best for you to try to find somebody else to do this. And when you drive out of that driveway, sometimes a few days later, you're like, oh my God, why didn't I do that a year or two ago, right? You're like,
right.
And, clients, we all want to do our best, and we all want to have them all love us and all that kind of stuff, but it doesn't always work out. And I think that's something you got to remember. You're not going to always win on every lameness case or every founder case or whatever. You got to realize that you're not going to win on them all. And so therefore you got to be prepared for that mentally, and also prepare the client too, that, hey, we're going to do our best here, but we're in here deep. This is not great. And that's all the communication part of it, right? And you and I know that the farrier's always the first one to get blamed if something's not right. It is. And I feel sorry for you guys, and I try to back you as best I can.
No, and I've seen you do it.
But they are. First it's the farrier, then it might be the veterinarian. And then if you're lucky, it might be the trainer. It's never the horse's fault. And it's never the owner's fault. You know what I mean? And that's just something I guess you got to grin and bear and realize that you're not going to win on every one of them.
No. And it doesn't seem to get any easier when you lose. But
no, it doesn't. But you know what? A client that you work with and they trust you and they realize you've done everything you can. And that's the other thing too, is don't ever be afraid to ask for another opinion.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If you think things are not going right, and I'm like, geez, I've never seen one like that before, or this just isn't going the way it normally goes and I've never had a client that was upset with me for asking, say, listen, I want to run these rads to the university or get this person's opinion or fly these, ultrasounds off to somebody else. They've never been complained about it, even if it costs money, to get someone else to look at it. Because, you're doing the best for their horse to get this thing better.
Yeah.
And in their interest too, right? So that's another thing for the young farriers or veterinarians. Like, don't ever be afraid to ask for another opinion. And if you're lucky enough to work along with somebody that you can ask their opinion to, or another veterinarian in a practice, and that's all a bonus.
Yeah, well, that leads perfectly into one of the questions, which is, who is your go-to if you get stumped on a case?
Stumped on a case? That's a good question. I've done a lot of work with Dr. Tim Over down in Florida and learned a lot from Tim over the years. Dr. Rick Mitchell, too, has been a real help for me, too, back in the day. At OVC, initially, Dr. Trout, I went in there and every 2 or 3 weeks, I worked for myself for the first 6 months in an individual practice, right? And I'm like, holy crap. So I'd be running there with a whack of x-rays. He'd see me coming, and he tried to run the other way, but he was very good. There's lots of other veterinarians too. Dr. Cote does a lot of work with, Melissa at McKee Ponnell. Melissa there, we do a lot together with our MRIs and scratch our heads together quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And luckily, too, to have Paige and Emily here, too. That, we all luckily have our different things that we're more into. Paige is into chiropractor and stuff and get her opinion on this that way. And Paige is great, too. Doing an internship at a vet school really helps you see a lot of stuff, right, too. And there's different ways to do things. And so we're very lucky to be able to work back and forth. The other group that we work on, too, with Al McLeod and those guys, too, to run stuff by, right? It's great. Alan Young used to help me a lot too back in the day. And also, I was very lucky when I started to have Dr. Coulter John, who was the lameness guru back in the day, then to work with him and Dr. Gunn, his wife at that time. And she was a surgeon. And so I helped to teach her some repro stuff, and she helped teach me a lot of surgical type stuff. So I was very lucky that when I started, I had a good group. And that's why I left where I was initially by myself and worked in with them, because you're not going to learn everything at school. Just like, you can go take a Farrier course, but you're not going to learn everything there.
Nope.
Even if you are doing Farrier all the time, when we go through vet school, there may have been 3 people at 125 in my class that actually do horses now.
Really?
Yeah. Like maybe 3 or 5. There's very few of us.
Yeah.
And so how do you expect them to be able to teach you everything when they have all these other small animal people in the class? Like, you have to go other places to learn, and you learn a lot of it after you leave vet school, right? So that's just the scratching at the surface, really.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Which is exactly the same on
With
our
the
side of things.
exactly, right?
And like you said, experience really, that's the best teacher if you're paying attention.
Yep.
Well, it's humbling, but it can also teach you a lot.
Yeah, this job, both these jobs are very humbling at times. You're like, you leave there and you're like, holy crap.
I thought I had that
I
figured.
had this under control or whatever. Like, and one other thing too, I'll say is that, and I tell this to all the students that I have that come, and same with you guys as Farriers, if you have a really tough case to do that thing first thing in the morning.
Okay.
So you're not sitting there all day going, oh my God, I got to go, or like a bad horse to work on or something like this. Like, like, oh, dreading that at the end of the day, and you're tired, and not do that first thing in the morning, get it over with. And 9 times out of 10, it'll be not nearly as bad as you thought it was going to be.
Rip off the Band-Aid.
Yeah. Yeah. And get that one done first. And then the rest of the day's a piece of cake.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Or the difficult client or whatever. Get that one done first and then go from there. And then you can enjoy the rest of the day.
That's good. What is your go-to shoe if you've got one that you cannot figure out what is going on? Do you have like a go-to prescription shoe that sometimes it's like a Hail Mary that they won't go for an MRI and like the client doesn't want to spend the money?
I mean, you got to think about it. The egg bar shoe has been a pretty popular throughout the years. You know what I mean? And it helps a lot of horses. But I don't think I could say I have a go-to shoe because every case is so different.
Yeah.
And there's so many different, you know what I mean? Now with this, with the ICELP, and Jean-Marie has all these different ideas too with shoeing, whatever, and you guys hear them all. And some I think really help, and some of them, you know what I mean? You kind of question, is that going to work on this horse? And you might try it, but you're going to change it. So I don't think I could say I have a go-to shoe because we've changed them around so much. And there's so many different. I will admit the flip-flops have been kind of neat for us for these horses that have, sore heels, contracted heels. And the clients sometimes think we're crazy when you first like a what?
Yeah.
And they've worked well for a lot of horses. Yep. There's no doubt about it. So that's been a new arsenal, should we say, to the, a lot of the pour-in pads, those kind of things have helped some of these footsore horses as well. I think just trying to get those horses' feet well balanced for that horse with some radiographs if you need them, I think it helps probably as much as anything than some big fancy mag shoe, as some of them call them, mag wheel on this one, or you know what I mean? You'll see some of these quarter horses you're like, oh my God, what's going on there? You know what I mean? Like they'll come with a lot of wedge shoes and et cetera, and a wedge pad in there too. And I'm like thinking, how is those tendons going to work on this one? Yeah, so I don't think I could say I have a go-to shoe per se, but there's a lot of them out there. And keep your mind open.
Okay.
Because there'll be some new ones coming next week, I'm sure.
Yeah, probably. What's the next thing on your bucket list?
Next thing on the bucket list, that's a good question. Professionally or personally? Or
It can be either or both.
we've been doing this for a while, so we'll probably start in the next 5 years, slow down a little bit, I think. I'm very lucky with the way we have things set up here. And as we're sitting in the workshop that's now heated, and I spent years underneath the tractor doing something. We're probably a jack of all trades, you know what I mean? But I love doing stuff, and I'm not one to sit still very long, unless there may be a hockey game on or something like that.
Right.
No, we're very lucky. The clinic here is set up pretty well as it could be set up. I will admit that now that I've been here in the wintertime a little more, maybe some heat in the arena might help. I'd love to try to do a little more riding and stuff like that. It's really neat to see your young horses progress with someone else on there. We've been very lucky. We have a lot of different clientele, and Hyde's done a lot of our training and stuff with us.
Mm-hmm.
And now we've got horses in a lot of different places, which is really neat to go see them mature and progress, and how excited your clients are about playing with your horses too, right? So that part of it's really neat. We'll probably slow down on the breeding a little bit here and now. I think we used to breed 2 or 3 a year. You start to collect them too, as I'm sure you've heard and you see with your clients.
Yeah.
But it takes a long time in the breeding world to figure out what's the
Right.
best thing and
Yeah.
what's the best combination. So you may breed the mare 5 times before you got this figured out.
Mm-hmm.
So it takes a lot of work and a lot of time. You have to have a lot of patience for that game. But that's one of my passions now, watching the young horses develop and grow, succeed. And you think this one should be a jumper, and no, it's better as a hunter or whatever.
Yep.
And they'll throw you curves for sure here and there.
Yep.
But probably to play with the horses a little more and maybe slow down a touch. Yeah, if that's possible.
Good for you. Yeah. I don't know if you're slowing down is really in your vocabulary, but what's your favorite method of soothing aches and pains?
I love my hot tub.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Me too.
Yeah. The hot tub does wonders for me anyway.
Favorite drink?
Mojito's pretty good one. Yeah. The other one, what's that new one now that we're with the copper mug? What do you call that one?
Oh, the Moscow Mule.
Moscow Mule's up there
Yeah.
too. Yep.
Those are good. Favorite genre of music?
Listen to a bit of everything. Yeah, but I really do like to listen to music quite often when I'll have your headphones on when cutting the grass or playing the tractor or whatever. Yeah, I find that's a good one to relieve some of the stress down then. But listen to a bit of everything.
Okay.
However, the country, when I get in the tractor and it's blaring at at full build for some of the girls, I have to turn it down a bit, but it's still all right.
Yeah, we had to turn the music down this morning.
Yeah, that's right.
Do you work out?
I try to do as much as I can. Yeah, I do. But I'm not a real person to go in the gym and work out, but I'll either go for a run, jump on the mountain bike or the fat bike and do something that way physical. I like having fun when I work out.
Mm.
Luckily for me, I'm a kiteboard fanatic, and that's a really hard workout, and it's really good. But unfortunately, you need to have water and you need to have wind
And the ability to cross borders.
right on for that one right this time of the year. But now, as you can look at my wing over there, that's the new passion. We've been using that with the skis in the back 40. And I did that the other day. The horses thought I was crazy, but nobody got hurt. So that was good news. But so you get to extrapolate. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, luckily I just had my shoulder surgery done here not that long ago, so I had to do a lot of rehab with that, with the weights, etc. But I'd much rather be outside running through the woods or something like that.
Enjoying it. Yeah. Okay. And for our last one, what would you have been if not a farrier? Or sorry, with it,
I might have been
vet.
a farrier. I might have been a farrier, but that's
right.
a tougher job, I think. I think at times that's a tougher job. I don't know. I probably maybe would have. I love riding the horses, but I don't have that much time now. But hopefully, I will down the road again. But that was my passion initially. And then when I figured out a couple of horses got hurt and we sold one, I thought, oh, well, maybe so I'll go to vet school. And then here I am today.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean the physiotherapy thing that my brother did, that's pretty neat too. Like I like the rehab and trying to fix things. I like fixing things. That challenge.
It's kind of like trying to solve a mystery, and then
And every day is different.
yeah.
That your job and my job, every day you may go to the barn and you got 10 to shoe and you're like, oh, that's pretty simple, whatever. And then one's going to have a quarter crack or one's going to something, you know what I mean? And, or a bruised feet or something like this, or this one here, holy crap, this thing's toes are really growing faster than this. You know what I mean? Like there's and you think it's normal, never a dull day. Anyway, that's for sure.
Yeah. I think that's kind of part of the personality built into both of our careers. You have to like
Yep.
the novelty and
like
and
the novelty, and
challenge.
you have the challenge of that, and you have to run with the punches, because once you think you got something or you know something, it's going to change. Yeah.
Sure. Well, thank you very much for doing this. I'm
Oh,
glad
no
we finally
problem.
had the chance.
Yeah, I
to
know.
do
No, I think it was a year ago you first asked, or maybe even more than that. But anyway, we took a snowstorm and COVID, and
Here
in order
we
to get
are.
it done. But here we are.
Okay. Well, thanks again.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Take care.